way. Of course, we do have the latest Karibu news coming in from the region, as well as the international news later on. But for now, let's dive straight into what is happening.
Yeah.
Andrew, very exciting news coming in, of course, about everyone has literally been up and about looking at what the president said. And remarkably, as we talk about the SMEs, something that comes up, of course, is what he said, that, you know what, we're going to be a little bit frugal when it comes to businesses, because all you're doing is importing clothes from dead Europeans. So business people, business Ugandans in business, if you know you are into importing clothes from dead Europeans, please try to look for alternative businesses, because that is not the way to go, according to the president. But he did highlight, of course, a couple of areas: manufacturing as well as industrialization. Those are key areas to him, and he believes that within by 2040, Uganda's economy should have gotten some place that is much better than where we are right now. But of course, a lot was brought. Let's give you just a little bit of a hint about it. We have 5.2 trillion given to transport infrastructure. And this is what we said, and remember in our conversation yesterday, we said we don't think that there's going to be any ignoring of this infrastrucro, especially in transport, but looking at the implications that it has to agriculture and how, of course, agro-industrialization is a big topic within Uganda from the last financial year into this one. So we knew that the road infrastructure would get something as well. 9.2 governance and security, 9.2 trillion, 9.9 trillion to human capital development. We also looked at the linkages earlier on, all through the last couple of weeks, talking about the need for human capital development. And 2.3 goes to development plan implementation, 2.1 trillion goes to private sector development, 1.7 trillion goes to agro-industrialization, 1.6 trillion regional development, as well as 1.1 trillion sustainable energy development. That is just about it of that big national cake coming in. There's quite a lot of concerns and quite a lot of talk about ABCD. Of course, it was still reinstated in that conversation, in that address yesterday, talking about corruption. The president is coming on quite heavy on corruption and saying we are cracking the whip this time. And of course, you had quite a number of voices come up as well, saying, you know what, let's give a uniform. If it's capital offense, fine, let it be. Let there be uniform treatment, because a thug is a thug and a thief is a thief. So you cannot treat them differently, because the reality about it is we get to lose quite a lot of the domestic revenues and whatever else comes in to corruption. It's quite something that is big. Let's hope that this time it's not just all talk. Andrew, do you think it's just all talk, or this is something? And especially when we look at governance, 9.2 trillion, that's quite a hefty amount going on to there.
Well, talking about corruption, of course, we first of all know that one thing I've seen about President Museveni, most especially, because when we talk about the budget speech and all that, majority of the speech actually, sadly, ends in Kololo. And yeah, I'm justifying why. Yeah. Because if I'm to say, it's like a sick person, you know that they have cancer and you give them Panadol. That's what he does. In most cases, when he sees pressure in the people about corruption and all that,
that's when it comes in.
He will get a few culprits that he will put in there. Yeah. So by the time he went to speak to Kololo, he had already, we saw members of parliament implicated. Yeah, 3 of them. But the actual question is, are those the people at the core of corruption in parliament? Question number one. We saw that this whole issue about the iron sheets and getting a few ministers, because in most cases, because we shall say that, I mean, it seems like there are people that are licensed to be corrupt, as long as the funds that they are having
that
are to
are in front of them, they will always
use them for the benefit of the government,
yes,
of his government. In most cases, you know, something in that line. So the whole bit of corruption, I think we have not yet gotten to the core of it.
Of
Actual action. And even we are treating what we call, we're not treating the actual cause of corruption. You know, it's like you have a swelling in the stomach, you have to go for an operation and it's removed out. We have not done that as a country.
What do you
when
think
it comes
is the
to corruption.
root cause? What do you think is the root cause for corruption in this country?
I mean, it's quite a lot. It all has to do with politics, because it explains. It could be partly of the reasons why he's even still to power till today. You know, if we talk about all these constitutional reforms we have seen and all that coming in, adjusting the constitution age limit,
ethics
and all that.
If you say you are leaving after this
absolutely,
please leave. Yes,
exactly.
Please leave.
It was all that, but how did that happen? Is it supposed to?
You're saying it starts with the head. It starts with the head.
Because don't you think he knows the people that are corrupt?
But he also says, no, let's not get into, anyways, the political ideology of the head.
I'm trying to, the reason why I'm saying this is that it's always going to be that way. You know, the same talk, same speech. I remember when President Yoweri Museveni used to speak during the COVID-19 pandemic, literally every person used to listen to him. Why? Because he was talking about things that people are concerned about with. They could feel that. But talking about the budget speech, in relation to corruption and so many other that was discussed, people don't really mind that much, because we know, because you get excited. They say this secondary school is going to be built here in my region. You're excited after listening to the budget, but the year passes in, nothing. Yeah, so there are quite lots of stuff, and it's very interesting how things come out.
Well, Andrew, I know the trickle down and the coordination and all that is very key. If he comes up and says something, sometimes I wonder, is it a one-man team, or he does have a team as well that he should?
But I think in his regime we've had the most establishment of corruption agents, anti-corruption agencies.
That's true.
But
it hasn't yielded that
the
much
perception,
fruit.
the corruption index is increasing.
Well,
Transparency International released the report and we scored the highest in East Africa. Yet we have over 5 anti-corruption agencies.
And that's very true. But we were doing quite well, actually, when it came to transparency in the East African region compared to other East African
But we scored
countries.
that mark and lower than what we scored the other year.
Well, we need to be. We need more education. The great thing about it is that when it comes to education, 2.4 trillion has been set aside for education. PDM, 2.4 trillion as well. Oil and gas, 920.8 billion, whereas tourism, 289 billion. Let's get right into the press and have a look at what more has been cut out. Press review coming. Right away in your daily monitor, the president said he rejected cheaper credit for business people whom he said were flooding Uganda's markets with imported clothes of dead people abroad, and said expected windfall from oil will turbocharge Uganda's economy in ways the GDP will jump tenfold before the 2040 target. Quite a lot of expectations coming in from the oil sector. But he also said that matters of national importance, including justice, administration, under which he held traditional justice systems employed by the judiciary. But he also demanded for tougher handling of murder, rape, and corruption suspects. Andrew, that should be some good news coming in from you, given that you wanted a tougher stance. But for the key 4 areas, he said jobs were being created and wealth multiplied through 4 key sectors, that is commercial, agriculture, information communication, technology, as well as manufacturing. Those 4 particular areas are his main areas for employment. How new taxes will affect regional trade, of course, that comes in. We talked about the excise duty. This is still there. Excise duty exemption targeted at eggs, imported onions, potatoes, potato crisps, and potato chips exported to Kenyan market but sourced from EAC member states is likely to boost regional trade in consumer goods. Focus on allocations, not amounts. That is what experts are saying. Focus on the allocations, not amounts. Yesterday, the Finance Minister, Matia Kasaija, read the 72.1 trillion budget under the theme Full Monetization of Uganda's Economy through Agriculture, Industrialization, Digital Transformation and Market Access. However, experts say the budget should not just be about the total figure, but the focus should be on the allocations, where and what the expected output or outcome should be. Soldiers, police get huge salary rise in new budget. Some good news coming from them. We get to see current pay for an army private is 485. What is proposed by Parliament is 800, almost double actually, to 828, and actual pay is going to be 606,000. So some good news coming from them. But on other news as well, EU World Bank impressed with Uganda's economic performance. I know Andrew, you should have something to say for that. And
let me say something. But anyway, I think
yes,
Uganda. Okay, I think let me first put that aside. It will come in the next hour. I want confirmation on that right now. Remind me, please,
yes,
that I have to say something about that.
I know it's quite a lot, and we're looking at agriculture sector improving. Regional governments focus on debt repayment. Most of the regional governments, of course, are struggling under debts and struggling, of course, post-pandemic, to see that there's some sort of like getting back on their feet. You've seen quite a lot of restructuring in Kenya and Tanzania, as well as Uganda having a little bit of direction in being able to restabilize. Coming in, will Uganda consolidate recently achieved middle income status? Minister and UIA staff lock horns over 500 million service awards. A lot coming in. Get your daily monitor and find out what is in here, because there is quite a lot that you can be able to read. Lastly, to crown it off, Kigezi farmers reap from climate smart agriculture. You should be able to see this coming in and what have been the improvements and what else is the line coming. Okay.
Now, of course, heading into the new vision here, of course, there is a page here, page 8, which reveals what experts think of the 2024-2025 budget, 72 trillion national budget. And of course, I see the likes of John Walugembe, the Executive Director of Federation of Small and Medium Enterprises. Quite a number of CEOs from different business research institutes. And of course, also here, what others say about the agriculture budget. Was it worth the allocation? And of course, here, seeing that policy makers want a government to give ICT priority. Of course, the allocation cannot support the much needed infrastructure development. Yeah, that's the experts. Now, of course, still, what ordinary Ugandans say about the budget? There's still reactions, talking about people. See people from the old taxi park, some traders.
Just give us one comment.
This person from the old taxi park in Kampala says that, of course, fuel prices increase. However, the government needs to regulate fuel companies to guard against exploitation. Now, the fuel suppliers charge different prices in the city, and we have failed to understand why there is a difference in these fuel prices. You find that a petrol station in this of a given company in Kampala city center, the prices are different, and when you go to the other suburbs, there is also, they charge a different price. There is not uniformity in the prices. So, and I've also been looking at this and wondering why, and he's really having this, but of course there are quite various reasons. But we see entering into a partnership with the company from Bahrain to be able to
to stabilize the prices and give something lower?
Yeah, because that's the reason why we shall be able to import the oil through UNOC and distribute to other petrol stations within the different brands in a way to, because this was purposely to regulate price, the massive exploitation. So we don't know how far with that, because now UNOC, before, what delayed this was because UNOC had been denied a license to operate in Kenya, you know, and not until the Attorney General, Michael Chiriowa, had to take the case to the East African court. And Uganda won the case. Now, UNOC can't do that. But we don't know how effective that is going to be. But it can answer the gentleman's question.
Fuel, food prices, education, medicine, those are the main cores. Really.
The main cores.
Yeah, for the average Ugandan.
Yeah.
Those are the main cores for the Ugandan that is down there. If you destabilize anything, whether to do with budget, whether it's trillions, as long as you destabilize those particular areas, you're going to have quite some concerns.
Quite some concerns. Coming in. Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, still to proceed here, here they tell you how the national budget will affect your wallet. Now, this is personal, according to you. Now, of course, here, according to a comment, analysts said consumers will have to tighten their wallet expenditures since the taxes directly or indirectly drop into their incomes, thereby reducing their disposable income. Wow.
Yes, widening that tax base, UR is already rethinking and strategizing. I think it's already done that, and we should see some tightening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tightening is going to be in place. Talk about that.
Amazing. You know, the interesting fact is that last year, when we had a budget of 53 trillion, about 43 was spent. And now the question is, where is the 11 trillion?
And what is it say? What's the voice? What's the reply for that? What's the feedback? Where
it's not there.
Accountability?
It's not there.
It's not there. Well, Andrew, you'll have to dive further, because clearly that's not a satisfactory answer to say it is not there. There must be an answer for that.
The challenge is that we're not going to spend the actual 72 trillion because we know we always spend, we budget too big. And I think it's the reason as why we achieve less of, less according to the intentions of the budget, you know. Now, I saw something here, so interesting. I'm sorry, but I have to say I saw this about some money that was allocated to the National Development Plan. This is a development plan implementation, because we saw the launch of the National Development Plan for.
That was 2.3 trillion.
Yeah. So the question is, according to the review of the National Development Plan 3, 60% loopholes.
Yes.
And now, this is something that has been running for every 5 years. 5 years, 60% is a huge figure.
True. Sure.
So that brings me to say, what causes the loopholes? It's
going to be like cyclical. What happened in the last financial year and the year before literally keeps coming up.
Keeps coming up over.
But now you get to also see basically that huge gap between 1.7 trillion in agro-industrialization and then versus 9.2 trillion in governance and security, or 9.9 trillion in human capital development. That is quite a lot.
Human capital development.
The gap is so huge. The gap is so huge. And quite a lot has been said already in the last couple of hours about this. 1.7 trillion agro-industrialization and versus 9.2 trillion on governance and security and 9.9 trillion on human capital development. What should be getting more of the national cake, and where should the emphasis be? You know, where should the emphasis be?
The amazing fact is that most of the allocations, for example, if you talk about industrialization, and if we say, because this is something that has been fronted even at the beginning of this year, looking at Uganda's, talking about industrialization has been a big talk. But when you take a look at the allocation, it's not even 1% of the budget. If we say that is what we are relying, be it agro, be it industrialization or manufacturing. So the question is, what exactly do we want as a country? But we can spend billions and billions on the travel of the different ministers. Security. I know security is okay. It can be understood. But travel.
9.2 on security. 9.2?
9.2 trillion.
Trillion, yes. Not even billion, trillion. Trillion. But I want you to have a look at this. This is what was very interesting for me. But remember, we are also looking at programs, Barije, and PDM gets 2.4 trillion. So PDM gets 2.4 trillion. Versus agro-industrialization 1.878 trillion. But also looking at basically the coordination, the linkages between the two, assumedly that, remember, the goal, the main goal for the National Development Plan 3 is improve the livelihoods, the household incomes, as well as quality of life. Yeah. So assumedly that the outtake right now, the outlook and the perspective, the strategy coming down to PDM is to have this 2.4 trillion down to the people, down to the households, make that money, push it into agriculture, be able to add some value, yes? And that is where the core is, down to the grassroots. And this is why you have the parish development model coming in and taking quite a swig of that, of that money at 2.4 trillion. So that when you have your maize, you have your soybeans, you have your goats, you have your chicken, your poultry, then guess what? By the time you are done with that and you have organized it very well, then you can't be able to move on to the next base. It will find the agro-industrialization at 1.878 trillion, waiting to be able to package it quite nicely for export. But talking about export, we will be as well looking at that. We are trying to find the linkages. Remember, we moved away from 2020, we transitioned from sector budgeting and right now into program-based budgeting. And when we look at this, we have had a couple of people come in and say, really, agro-industrialization 1.7, but then you get to look at particular programs that basically work together with that agro-industrialization, such sectors, such particular programs as PDM being able to get 2.4 trillion. So we should be able to see whether this will work out in the end. It will work out if there is a lot of the right, you know, the right monitoring, the right redress,
the right environment.
Exactly.
Talking about the PDM, and you see, talking about, okay, the people that are receiving this money, the first question I ask myself, how long have they, the length, the time they have spent when they don't have the desired disposable incomes? And what are these disposable incomes for? To meet their basic necessities, talking about shelter, food, education, and you mentioned health. Yeah. So giving all this money to these people and the usability, and none of these people that actually give this money, I can bet with you, can even draw a business plan. So when they get it, what is going to come in their mind first? Basic needs.
Getting
I'm not getting to that, but the basics. Don't think about
I was told, Andrew, this was a direct report from one of the LC3s that he did when some of them received these monies. We're still looking at the 2.4 trillion injected into PDM. That when some of these got the money, unfortunately, it was diverted, went through to school fees, basic needs like you're talking about, went through to food and school fees.
Now food security.
Yes, and of course others definitely channeled it quite the wrong way into merrymaking. And
I know some people, what was it, Northern Uganda, some of the people that acquired this money, they invested in, they were roasting maize. It was a group of people, but they didn't get the market. The maize stayed in Luganda, they called it Yadiva. It stayed, no one bought the maize. So this money is for the locals to trade amongst themselves, to have something. But even the people you're trying to buy from don't have the money to actually buy your product. So, and
it really depends on the niche, the business that you are in as well.
What can 1 million do?
Quite a lot actually. It can start a poultry small scale poultry.
It can start, but can it sustain? Yes, because you don't expect profitability in the first 2 months.
It can. If you are getting 100 chicken, you can.
100 chicken?
Yes. Free range, you can.
All right.
You can. And 1 million is still some money when you come to think about it. But so much more. This is going to be a pretty hectic day, and we have quite a lot that is coming in. Andrew still is a little bit, he says that 1 million is peanuts and can't do much. And then, of course, you have others that under UWEP, under all these different programs that are getting much less than that.
Yeah.
And they will still tell you we are able to do something, whether it's mushroom growing, whether it's something like that, we are still able to do something about it. So please stay with us, get onto our social media platforms and let us know what you think. We would really want to get your feedback on this. But for now, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with regional news on Karibu, East Africa.